loaded potato soup. And I'm going to start by sauteing some leeks in half a stick of butter, 4 tablespoons of butter. Leeks are very dirty. They grow in the ground, and when you cut them into rings or half rings, you'll see that there's a lot of dirt embedded in them. Therefore, it's imperative that you rinse the leeks very well before cooking. So I'm putting them in a basket strainer and I'm running them under cold water, trying to ensure that I'm getting all the dirt out. And just make sure they're very dry before you saute them in the butter. My leeks are clean and dry, and my butter is almost melted at this point, and I'm going to begin sauteing the leeks and the butter together. I'm using unsalted butter because I can always add salt. That way I can gauge the appropriate amount. And because we're dealing with potatoes, this dish takes quite a bit of salt. So you want to sweat the leeks. You want to make sure that they become a little translucent, and that mixture of leeks is going to shrink to half of what you see now. And I have about 2 cups of sliced leeks in the pot with the butter. So give it a good stir, and they need to cook for about 10 minutes, medium-high fire. Now I'm going to start adding a couple teaspoons of kosher salt. I probably will add a little bit more later, but I'll start with 2 teaspoons of kosher salt and some freshly ground pepper. 1 teaspoon of freshly ground, finely ground would be even better, black pepper. It's been 10 minutes and my leeks are very sweaty, which is good, and look how much they have reduced. I'm now going to add 2 pounds of Yukon Gold potatoes that have been peeled and diced. And Yukon Gold potatoes, I think, have fantastic flavor. They're also a nice, pretty goldenish color, different than a russet. So I'm going to add to that about 2 to 3 cups of chicken stock. I just want to make sure that the potatoes are covered. So we're going to end up using a quart of chicken stock, but I need to fully immerse the potatoes in the chicken stock so they cook. So I like to cook them in the stock. I want to boil these potatoes. I want to put a lid on and vent it a little bit, otherwise a mess is going to ensue all over the stove. And once they boil, I want to lower the heat and simmer them, and it's probably going to take about 20 to 30 minutes until they are fork tender. 25 minutes have passed and I'm just poking them with a fork and they are very tender and the potatoes are done. Now I'm going to let it cool. My mixture is cooled, and you could use a immersion blender, a hand blender, to puree this, but I find it's easier to use a blender, a good blender. So this is a Vitamix, and I'm putting all of the potato mixture with the leeks and eventually the liquid that's remaining into the blender, and I want to puree it until it's nice and smooth. Make sure you get all the liquid in there as well before you puree this. It's a lot of mix. Now the mixture is pureed, I'm going to pour it back into the same pot, but I've cleaned it. And I'm going to add a little chicken stock because this mixture now is pretty thick. I think a little too thick for soup. So once all of my potato leek goodness is in there, I'm going to add a couple more cups of chicken stock. Now that I've added the chicken stock, I need to bring the soup back up to a boil. I like to serve soup piping hot. Be careful when you ladle it into bowls. So once I put a fair amount into a bowl, I'm going to top with what I would like to see on a baked potato. The only thing I didn't add is sour cream, but you could put sour cream on this. I've got some cheddar cheese, and I've got some bacon, and I have some chives. So I like to put the cheese on first because then it starts to melt, followed by bacon that I've crisped up. So it gives it nice little texture, and of course, bacon is fantastic. And fresh chives. Oh, this was a really delicious and easy to make soup.